So it's a nice Wednesday right now. I'm just playing some Cyberpunk for fun, but you know what? It's really chilly in Colorado right now. It's like, 20 degrees outside. It's like 50 degrees down in this studio space. I'm a little bit chilly. I mean, to put it other way, is like I'm cutting through my shirt, Now, of course, I could just like turn on the heat or something in the house and warm up this space that way, but that wouldn't be very much fun. Why don't we do something a little less practical? You see, they just updated Cyberpunk 2077 with brand new settings to be used experimentally. Experimental graphical features are basically code for this is going to melt your computer because it's not practical to run, but it looks really pretty. And I just so happen to have an RTX 4090 in my gaming PC here from Apex Gaming PCs. I'll tell you more about them a little bit later in the video, but for now, all you need to know is that this thing is an absolute powerhouse. And so I figured we could put this game through its paces with this new update. For one, by cranking the settings all the way to the max and then seeing just how badly it causes everything to run. Already, look at that. My mouse cursor's going very slowly. You can see in the top left, I'm getting 9 frames per second. Again, on a 4090. This is gonna be fun, I can already tell. But you know what? Let's get a baseline. Let's drop this all the way back down to medium where I was before, because I want to see what the game actually runs like on this hardware to begin with. And as you can tell, it looks pretty good even by this standard. I mean, this is medium settings, and I feel like it's a looker. I mean, the lighting is great. The ambient lighting's great. Reflections are pretty good. Sure, there's screen space reflections. You can tell because when I look down, the reflections go away, but when I look up, they reappear. And if I go over and I take a car, you can see that frame rates are really good. We're just under 200 frames. By the way, this is rendering in native 4K with, of course, a little bit of DLSS to help things out. But this is running on medium, very pretty for medium settings. I mean, I'll be real. This is one of those games that even on lower tier hardware, if you can get decent frame rates, it's a looker, man. Oh, look at this. This is crazy. But if I stop right here and if I go into settings, I can turn on ray tracing. Now, we all know ray tracing is pretty standard. This is something you can use for improving like reflections. Usually it makes like glossy areas actually reflect light more realistically. Mirrors will actually reflect things off of them, or water will reflect things under a bridge, even though you can't see it directly. It just makes things look a little bit more realistic. And if I turn that on, you can see with DLSS on, we are running down around 130 frames, but this is DLSS end frame generation, so we're giving this every benefit of the doubt. But you can see in the reflection of the car, it's actually reflecting the signs that are above us on that advertising billboard. You can actually see it in the roof of the car in real time. Like that's pretty crazy. And this is the perk of ray tracing. It can make things just look that much more realistic. It's a looker. It's really pretty. But what is overdrive ray tracing, or as it's also known as path ray tracing? Well, it's even more insane than this. As you can see in this little showcase video that NVIDIA put out showcasing what this tech can do, what overdrive or path tracing allows you to do is to have actual global illumination, where a light source like this one is actually reflecting off of objects more realistically instead of just specific surfaces. Everything in the world is being treated the same. If that didn't make sense, this demonstration by Digital Foundry will probably make things make a little bit more sense. As you can see, we have a yellow light in this scene, and then the moment that they switch over to the overdrive ray tracing mode, that yellow light is reflecting off of every object, and you are even seeing it lighting the underside of the garbage can, the backside of the wall, in the shadow, everything more realistically, because the color of the light bouncing off of different objects affects the future interface that light is going to encounter, if that makes any sort of sense at all. Again, the simplest way of putting this is that it just simply makes all lighting in all of these games actually realistic. Not just the glass, not just the mirrors, not just those reflective surfaces, but everything is treated realistically. And as you would expect, there is a major hit to performance when you turn this type of thing on, because in this scene that we're looking at here, the only stuff being ray traced is off of the particularly reflective surfaces, such as the top of the car, the puddles on the ground, which you see are reflecting the 8 up top. You can see that. And so it's only having to do the ray tracing for select select areas of the frame. Whereas if we switch over to the overdrive path tracing, you're gonna see some absolutely crazy differences in the lighting. So let's do that now. Let's crank it to overdrive. And as you can see, by default, I have all of the DLSS stuff turned on, but I wanna show you just the difference between these. If I go ray tracing ultra and I turn off frame generation and I turn off DLSS completely just to see what the 4090 is capable of putting out by itself, you can see once we're in the game itself, we drop down to around 40 frames a second. I would say it's certainly playable. It's rendering natively 4K with ray tracing. I mean, it looks really, really good. And though 40 frames is not my preference, it's still very playable. But you want to see what happens when we go into overdrive mode? Well, we go over into overdrive. We're going to turn off DLSS and frame generation, hit apply, and we're going to see what this does, okay? Remember we were around 40 frames before? If I back out, we drop all the way down to about 20. It's hanging right above 20, 21, 22. I would say, 18, 17, 16. Oh God. I would say this is getting into unplayable territory. Call me a frame rate snob. I don't care. This is a little rough, but again, this is experimental. This isn't meant to be implemented in this way without DLSS or some of those other technologies helping it out. So if we go into the settings and we turn that stuff on, I would guess it becomes much more playable. Let's set it to quality and turn, or auto, and turn frame generation on and back out. And all of a sudden we're up at 80 plus, closer to 90 frames per second, just with DLSS and frame generation turned on. That's absolutely crazy. And I mean, once we get moving, you can see some of those passive effects. So this is a very yellowy light, of course. You can see it bouncing down, reflecting the underside of the car with that warm light instead of just a rasterized look. The light changes to red. Everything around it changes to a red hue. And if I go into settings and I turn this back down to say medium, you're going to see the change in I mean, right there, night and day. Just look at that. Man, that is crazy. Is it something that's like gonna totally change the way you play the game? Probably not, but man, when you see the side by side, it makes you realize just how bad the lighting is by default. That rasterized lighting is just nothing compared to this. Though then again, the rasterized lighting allows you to play it on hardware that doesn't, you know, melt itself at max clock speed, so that's something. Let's get out on foot and actually look around and see what this is like. I would say the reflections on the water are still a little grainy, but that's more just an artifact of DLSS. And if we look over here, I mean, it just looks crazy, crazy good. And again, if I just do a freeze frame here and I swap the settings back down, you're gonna notice just how different it looks. It looks way, way flatter. It just doesn't look anywhere near as good. Or like if I go to these guys, look at these guys. Okay, let's just take this guy, for example. All of the NPCs in Cyberpunk 2077 have a very, very flat look to them. They almost look like they're glowing by default. And when we turn this on, you're gonna see instantaneously more realistic skin. The shadows around their face are much more realistic and delicate. And if we look into places like this, you can see that it just looks way, way better. So like I mentioned, this is something for the highest of the high-end hardware. I mean, the exact phraseology they use is a technology preview. That basically means that they're trying to make this game the next Crisis, like can it run Cyberpunk on overdrive mode in order to test whether or not the hardware is where it needs to be in order to like really compete on the high end. And I mean, you can see it's very, very pretty, but I would not consider this super practical. Even if we drop the settings down to very impressive ray tracing ultra and we back out, you can still see it looks very, very good. And we get like 60 frames instantaneously. And then if we swap back, you can see a difference, especially in the reflections there and the quality of the lighting and the distance a little bit. But for 99.999% of people, it's probably not worth sacrificing so much performance. But you know what? That's kind of the point of all of this, is that this is a really cool thing to experiment with, but it's not very practical if we're being honest. Especially, bouncing between medium and overdrive, you can see a difference very, very clearly. And in that NVIDIA showcase, I mean, you can see the difference between the real global illumination overdrive lighting and when it's not implemented. But again, this is just like when it's cut side by side, you'd hope to see a difference. When you're playing the game and you're moving and running and shooting and gunning and driving and having a good time exploring, you're not going to be thinking, this is fun, but it would be way better if I had global illumination. Most people are not going to be saying that. And again, it just reinforces the idea that this is not actually built to be like the mainstay version of the game that you're expected to use. After all, it's just a preview. They want this to be something that creators and reviewers and journalists can use to compare performance and to push their hardware to the limit. But the average gamer, the everyday gamer, should not be selling their car to get a 4090 to have like more realistic reflections like that. I think we'll survive. I know it's like, it's easy for you to say, Luke, because you have that computer. Yes, I have this computer, but I have this computer because like this is my job and because I have phenomenal partners over at Apex Gaming. Apex Gaming provides pre-built computers that are extremely well put together, are optimized right out of the box, look great, and they don't break the bank either. If you go to the link in the description box below, you can select from one of our starter, enhanced, or ultimate build outs, but even from there, you can go into customize and tweak it to your heart's content. If you already have a GPU you want to use, okay, you don't need to upgrade that. If you want to swap out RAM, if you want to swap out CPUs, if you want to swap it out however which way, you can just do that quickly and easily. It'll update the price for you in real time, and it will give you estimations of how that computer will perform in a given game, so you can see what you can expect in terms of performance. And as I said, I wouldn't recommend them if I didn't believe in their service. I've built all of my other gaming PCs in my life before this. My streaming PC under the desk, I built myself. And actually, just like 2 weeks ago on stream, I had to spend the first 2 hours of stream on my phone streaming it that way because the streaming PC had broken down for some random reason and I had to unplug everything. It was a whole thing. However, this Apex Gaming built PC has been amazing from day one, out of the box. I haven't had to tweak anything. It just works. The cables are all managed phenomenally well, and honestly, when I'm making videos and I want to just be able to jump into a game and experiment and play it at the highest possible settings, it's just nice to know that this was built by people who really know what they're doing, who are passionate about it, and who do this day in, day out. They know what to look for. They know all the little tricks for cable management, all of that goodness. And so you're going to be getting a computer that's built by professionals that's just gonna work when it gets to your front door, which is kind of what everybody wants at the end of the day. Check them out today at the link in the video description box below or in the pinned comment. Again, Apex Gaming PCs. I wouldn't recommend them if I didn't believe in them and if I didn't think they were a great partner. And I mean, this is a living example of how great their computers are because I use it in all of my videos to test all of these games and play them for you in real time or over on stream. I love it dearly. And again, if you're interested in a pre-built gaming PC, go check them out. The one thing I will say about this update that they've issued is that it seems to have broken most of my mods. I had that like flying car mod that seems to no longer work. When I try to boot the game with that, I get a basically error message that tells me all of my files are corrupted, and then when I disable the mod, all of a sudden it starts working again. So that's a thing. But in terms of stability and performance, it seems to be running really, really well. The game looks tremendous, and glitches are far less common than they used to be, which is also awesome. We also have the first DLC for this coming, probably the first and only DLC expansion coming for Cyberpunk 2077 later this year, which promises to be super, super badass. I mean, they're showing Idris Elba, Keanu Reeves is coming back. There's going to be a lot of really cool stuff in it, which I'm very excited for. And while I have not really forgiven CDPR for what they did with the launch of this game, because it was pretty bad. I mean, and they knew it was bad as well. They really did. Hiding copies of the game from press until the last possible minute, making it so reviewers couldn't share any footage of their own. They had to use B-roll, stuff like that. They knew that they were selling a broken product to their customers, and I'm not just going to roll over and forgive them for that. I require a little bit more than some updates and patches to add overdrive, ray tracing, and path tracing. Frankly, I'm gonna need more. But what I will say is that what they've done is pretty impressive. It's still not the game I think we were promised back in the day, but it's remarkable. And frankly, I think it's probably the most impressive showcase for what modern hardware from NVIDIA and AMD can actually do. I mean, it's pretty crazy when you actually think about what's being done every frame with this tech. I mean, it's absolutely wild. And like, if we actually go into combat, oh, these guys are very high level. Yeah. Okay, well. But again, when you really think about everything that's happening, each one of these lights is bouncing light around every object in this frame to realistically calculate what that light does. You can see that up there's blue lights. And so you see that light is going to bounce down off the floor of that landing and back up to reflect and light the upper area realistically. If I go back to medium settings and I turn it off, you see that that totally changes. All of this is just lit with the basic global illumination filler light, and it just looks kind of terrible. And we have some clipping there. But when I go back to Overdrive, you can see it's all realistically lit. There's no more random light there that shouldn't be there. This is all actually paced off, reflecting realistically. It's a small detail that not many people are going to care about, but once you know what to look for and you see it, man, it makes a difference. As I get run over again. But listen, I showed this to my wife. She looked at these settings and said that she couldn't tell a difference. And honestly, that's okay. If you're looking at this and you're like, honestly, I don't get it. Maybe it looks a little bit better, but I don't get it. Cherish that, love that, hold it near and dear to your heart, because having expensive tastes like global illumination in your games or being like an audiophile, it leads to nothing but misery. Okay, I'm telling you, as somebody that like has gone through the audiophile phases before. I have the nice speakers, I have the nice DACs, I have the nice like headphone amps, tube amp, whatever. I've been through that, and let me just tell you, once you've tasted that forbidden fruit and you can tell the difference between the really good stuff and the really bad stuff, life's never the same. And you just turn into a prick. Like, everybody can't stand you anymore. So cherish the fact that you don't mind rasterized lighting, because honestly, you're going to save a lot of money not buying into the latest trend of graphics cards and things. So be thankful, cherish that, hold it. Because honestly, if I could like flip a switch in my brain and not care about this and not see the differences, I probably would, because it would just make everything way easier. But once you've seen what this can do, man, it really is like the forbidden fruit. And I guess the last thing to address is whether or not this will ever come to console, because when we were talking about this on stream, a lot of people were like, how long until this comes to the PS5 or to the Series X? And frankly, I hate to be the bearer of bad news. There is a little nuance to the answer to this question, so let me just take it directly. The answer to the question of when this will come to PS5 and Xbox Series consoles is never. Maybe we'll see it with like a PS5 Pro. Honestly, it's more likely to come with like a PlayStation 6 or something like that. But frankly, this requires a $1,500 graphics card. And even then, you have to upscale all of the footage. You have to go and add frames injected into it. It's not as simple as just like, we'll just turn it on for next gen hardware. No, this is something that is very, very future oriented and not very practical for, again, 99.9% of players. So don't expect this level of lighting quality to be on any, I would say, consumer grade console for the next probably 5 to 10 years. Honestly, I just don't see how they bring something like this unless there's major strides made in the next few years that could come to like a PlayStation 6 or PlayStation 5 Pro. And even then, I just don't think it would be that practical to put all of that effort into the ray tracing side of things. I personally think that these console manufacturers and the developers and everybody should be putting way more focus on AI development and processing within consoles, because you could realistically have AI engines that could have realistic like actually realistic behavior on the part of NPCs where people can go around doing their day-to-day routines. They could even have in-game economies that are realistic where this person is going to work over here every single day, but one day just dynamically the AI calculates whatever the behavior was and decides that they're fired, so they leave. Maybe they end up homeless and they're on the street. There's all sorts of crazy cool stuff you could do with AI that is just totally untouched in modern games. And I think that's the next frontier. I think GTA 7 more realistically than 6, because 6 is probably pretty close to being done. But I would say Grand Theft Auto 7 is going to be focused on AI. I think that's the next frontier. And I think very few people will be like really focused on ray tracing. I think it'll be a cool feature, but just like the NVIDIA Hairworks stuff of the early 2010s or the PhysX stuff, or you remember when like The Witcher 3 came out and everything was about those hair physics that they had, all of that stuff was a cool gimmick at the time, but years later we moved on and we still have that stuff, but it's not the selling point anymore. I think ray tracing is currently the selling point, and while it looks amazing and it definitely helps, in the long run, I think we will be much better served focusing on AI and stuff like that. And if we just pause here, look at this, let's do a side-by-side of this, Jacob, and let's swap this out to medium and just look at the difference in lighting. I mean, that side-by-side should make this very, very clear just what the Overdrive is capable of. It's still a very, very good looking game at medium, but on Overdrive, it's just on another level. It's crazy. I think the biggest difference is NPCs. She looks like she's had a rough day, but I mean, NPCs. Oh, Johnny Silverhand. This is where he ended up. That's where he went. Oh, he dropped a can of food and now he's licking it up because he doesn't want it to go to waste. Yeah, NPCs are way better with Overdrive. Because again, like without Overdrive, everybody just looks like they're glowing for some reason. The skin just doesn't look right. You see? Like, why is he so well lit? He shouldn't be that well lit. He's in shadow. Like, I don't understand. It's so weird. But then you turn this on and all of a sudden he actually has shadows cast over him. Looks way, way better. But anyway, this whole thing is just me oogling and ogling at how cool this is. So I will probably leave it there, and I'm going to continue to experiment with this over the next few hours because I'm having a really good time with it, and why not? I'm going to keep trying to get the flying car mod working because I really like that mod and I'm bummed that it's broken, but we'll see if I can manage that. If you want to hang out with me trying this in real time, head over to Luke Stevens Live. Just search Luke Stevens Live in the search bar here on YouTube and you'll find me. I'm probably streaming at the very moment you're watching this video because I stream like all week. So yeah, come say hi. There were rumors we were moving to Twitch. We are not. So don't get that twisted. We experimented with it and found that it is a total dumpster fire. So we're sticking to YouTube Live and I'm very glad about it. Not to mention, if you're a member of Luke Stevens Live on YouTube, you also get access to the upcoming critiques before everybody else, just as a perk of membership, something to think about. And I will let you know, we have a video on Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order coming out very, very soon. And of course, once Jedi Survivor comes out, we'll be covering that one as well. But until then, thank you for watching. I love you all. Make sure to subscribe if you enjoyed the video and ring the bell because then you actually get notified of when new videos go up. And if you do that, maybe I can brighten up your Mondays and Fridays and occasionally Wednesdays when there's enough to talk about for me to make 3 videos in a week. I'm also launching a podcast very, very soon. I can't tell you exactly who the co-host is, but it's pretty exciting. It's pretty exciting. Again, come over to the live stream and I might let it leak a little bit, but I will be starting a podcast soon and it's gonna be awesome. Much love, everybody. I'll see you in the next one. Hugs and kisses. Stay safe out there. I love you. Bye-bye.